Welcome back here today on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College, another in our series of what's going on in the community. If you're a regular viewer of the show, you certainly recognize our guest today. We have Circuit Judge Chris Patterson on hand. When Chris comes, we're liable to talk about pretty much anything. Chris and I go back a long way. We like to reminisce and talk about the changes in the community. Today specifically, though, we're going to be talking about how COVID-19 and the pandemic and all of the health issues that are going on have affected the jurisprudence system. Some pretty interesting stuff. We're going to get some insight from Chris on the court system, how they're dealing with some of these issues, or some of the things you may run into if you have to deal with the court system. When we come back, we're going to talk to Chris, and we look forward to doing just that, about all this and more, and we will be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guest today is Chris Patterson, Circuit Judge Chris Patterson of the 14th Judicial Circuit of Florida. Hadn't seen you in a while. Saw you out and around at some parades and festivals and events. Obviously, since the COVID stuff has been going on, not so much. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Thanks so much.
It is wonderful to be back. Thank you very much. And we always appreciate the way you allow us to get our message out from the court system as well.
How's it going? I mean, we've got lots of craziness in the world right now, and we're not going to get into all of that stuff. But thumbnail sketch, how is it going with the court system, and how is Chris Patterson dealing with all that stuff?
Well, let's not talk about me. Let's talk about the court system instead. We had to close down our facilities on March 16th, and that was in all 6 counties. And we did that for the health and safety issues, and we are committed as we begin to reopen and bring people back to the courthouses. We are committed to that health and safety, making certain that their experiences in the courthouses are good ones, not negative ones.
So that March 16th was per Governor DeSantis?
That was actually per us. The court system took that upon ourselves based upon what medical data we were getting out of the CDC at the time. Now, since that time, we have developed a plan statewide. The Supreme Court had given this to us, a 4-phase system to ultimately get back to normal operations. We're still in phase 1. A number of the counties will begin to move to phase 2 on July 6th. Those will be limited in-person hearings, and there is a certain priority to those hearings. But we have been planning for the last 4 or 5 weeks in earnest to get people back into the courthouses and using new techniques to protect them.
So, lest there be any confusion, when we talk about phase 1, 2, and successively, we're in phase 2 or 3 now with the governor's plan to reopen business and restaurants. This is a totally different phase system that we're talking about. When you say phase 2, you're talking about as it pertains to the court system.
Different phase because, of course, different branch of government.
Yeah.
So the judiciary has a 4-phase plan, and it will begin to relax as we get to each additional phase. But the plan is set up that if you need to retract, much like an accordion, you open too fast, you can come back. Again, we can be a little more responsive based on the current medical data to make sure that we're not bringing people in before we need to.
So for the bulk of the last 3.5 months, courthouses have been closed to the public. Is that what you're saying?
In some cases, they've been open. The clerks have been doing business on a very limited basis, but it has been restricted access. And essentially, we've been doing all of our work remotely using the Zoom platform. That's been our best platform to do family, civil, criminal, a host of cases. So the court's been working during this time. You just haven't seen us because we've been working alone.
Anyone who invested in the Zoom Corporation prior to this catastrophe certainly coming out pretty good. So again, let me backtrack because I'm not a real smart guy. As of March 16th, you closed down all interpersonal relationships within that courthouse system, and you can put it in better words than I can. So you did continue through a video system, through Zoom in this case, to have first appearances and hearings and even some more serious court issues taken care of through that system?
Correct.
Okay, so talk about how that would work.
For example, we are having family law hearings concluded using Zoom. Evidence is being presented, witnesses are being sworn and testifying on this Zoom platform, just as you would in a courtroom, only now you're doing it remotely, usually the litigant being at their attorney's office, or the pro se litigant appearing as well. In criminal cases, we're doing primarily competency issues. We are doing bond hearings. We're also taking care of arraigning people on new charges. The one thing we cannot do yet is get to a jury trial. Right. And we're not ready to do a jury trial until we can again bring the general public to come in and serve as our jurors and make sure they're safe while they're here.
Yeah, and wow, that's a whole lot to unpack. In our pre-show, we talked briefly about this, and I would think that theatrical aspect of the prosecutor or even the defense attorney making their case to that live jury is an integral part of especially when it's a capital case, that you don't want to leave to a video rendering. You lose a whole lot of emotion sometimes through that. So if you're dealing with a nuts and bolts black and white case, that can be presented in any number of ways. Heck, you could do it by mail if you had long enough to do it, I guess. But when it gets to those emotional situations, who makes those decisions? Is it Chief Justice of Florida, or who?
Chief Justice, and then each of the 20 of us who are chief judges around the state, we will make it for our individual circuits. Now, when we finally get people back into the courthouse, we have a couple unique things to this circuit that folks will begin to see. Number one, they will see a number of shielding systems in the courthouse, in the courtrooms in particular, at the judge's bench, the witness stand, where the attorneys are sitting with their clients, court reporter, and then where the podium may be, so that shield will further protect the general public who may be there serving as jurors. Probably not
a bad thing when it comes to just physical security as well. I mean, obviously there have been many cases where a distraught parent seeing the person that's accused of maybe harming their child jumps the table and assaults that person, or a judge, and we've seen this happen, be assaulted by either a defendant or a family member. Not a bad thing, health-wise or simple physical security-wise.
Well, and I'll tell you, we've done it just for the health
certainly
priority, but it does have that added level of protection. One of the things people are going to see when they come to their courthouses is they must wear a mask. Now, a lot of other government agencies may not be doing that, but in the courthouse, you must wear a mask. You must answer satisfactorily the 5 screening questions that the CDC has, and you'll also stand then in front of a body thermometer kiosk, and it will automatically take your temperature. If you answer yes to being around somebody with COVID-19 recently, you're not coming in. If your temperature exceeds 100.4 degrees, you're not coming in. And you'll be given a phone number to call where you can call within 24 hours to get a new court date. So again, we're going to be very strict about who gets to come in the courthouse based on health protocols only.
So probably more incidents of continuances and further delays caused by potential health issues?
I think so. We liken this, the bad experience that we've had with regards to Hurricane Michael. We at least were used to the aftermath and how to schedule and understanding some relaxed continuances probably need to be made because people either are sick, they can't get to the courthouse because of lack of transportation, because you can't distance, and the like. So the judges are all ready for that.
Yeah, how will you, and I'm not really asking you this question, but I would imagine one of the concerns is how do you physically distance by 6 feet a full panel of jurors? You're going to have a larger jury area, I would imagine.
Well, we're flipping the courtrooms. From now on, the gallery becomes the jury box.
Wow.
So everybody can space out. We will turn the tables so they face the gallery to allow then the attorneys to present their cases to the jury sitting in the gallery. Witnesses will testify in an area where the gallery can see it more clearly. TV screens will be focused on the gallery. And then ultimately, when the jury decides it's time to deliberate, we will leave that courtroom. That becomes their deliberation room. So again, we're using space in a different way. The traditional jury boxes are not going to be used. They're too close.
So all this starts on July 6th?
The initial bringing people in, making sure they are using proper hygiene. You'll see additional sanitation stations throughout the courthouses, making sure they're social distancing and wearing the mask. We'll do some pre-trial functions in phase 2. We need to be in phase 2 for at least 30 days before we can move on. And again, making sure that our cases in the area are not going up, but rather maintaining or going downward in a trajectory. As soon as we can get to phase 3, that would be the chance for us to begin to try this jury experiment.
With the current climate of, especially in Florida, seeing cases increase, probably due to increased testing, but nonetheless, cases are increasing, not necessarily deaths. Are you setting yourself up for failure, or I mean, do you anticipate that this is going to plateau or level off to some extent?
I don't think we're setting ourselves up for failure, but I think, again, we need to be flexible, and it needs to be that accordion type. For example, in Bay County, I entered an order this week that retracted and said you cannot go to phase 2 yet. The numbers have been increasing. Your positive percentage rates have now increased. So we have delayed Bay County, but in the other 5 counties in the circuit, their numbers are good based on the medical data and the assistance we're getting from the Department of Health. They're a go to go ahead. We've got to get started, and we have to learn how to do everything over again, maybe smarter, maybe using technology at a greater extent as we start this, but we've got to start in-person hearings at some point.
And hats off to you for trying to make that, or forging ahead. Obviously, physical traffic in the court system in those other 5 districts or 5 areas, much lighter than what you would experience in Bay County, I would imagine.
It is, but the greatest fear is having 200 people standing outside of a courtroom trying to get in a queue. What we're doing is the judges are staggering their dockets, what I like to call the dentist appointment schedule. They'll do X amount at 9 o'clock, X amount at 10 o'clock, and 11, and so forth, and make sure the courtroom is cleared, and then bring in your next group. We're also cleaning the courthouses twice a day to make sure that we are maintaining a proper sanitization throughout the process, the entire facility, rather.
Jury selection. You're going to have to limit the number that you would typically, because a lot of times you've got a full courthouse of potential jurors that you go through and eliminate by process. So I would imagine everything is going to take a little bit longer, maybe by default as well.
Everything is, and we are telling people we need your patience to expect delay in this. But at the bottom line, your courtroom, based upon 6-foot distancing, is going to determine the maximum capacity you have. In many cases, it's 1/3 the number of seats there right now. That becomes your jury pool. So you'll select from that group. Once that selection is over and they have completely exited the courthouse, you'll have an afternoon group come in that will either help you get that first jury, or if you're fortunate enough, you get your second jury. But at the end of the day, we will not be doing jury trials at the maximum frequency that we normally would. We're going to have to learn how to do this safely first.
Do you anticipate that this is affecting in any way the right to a speedy trial? In other words, are there going to be even longer delays that may change some of the specifications about days before which you must get to a certain point in your case, or forgive me for not knowing the proper terminology.
It already has. The Chief Justice has already extended speedy trial out to July 6th. And in some cases, he may even extend it a bit further, understanding that since March 16th until July 6th, no trial has taken place. So that right to a speedy trial within 180 days, give or take, it has been impaired already. Now, by law, it has been extended, but you still have a number of folks that are waiting for a trial date now that we cannot yet set because we're not in a healthy condition to do so.
This is probably in the news, and I just don't pay attention to everything that's out there, but what are we seeing in our incarceration facilities, whether it's the county jail or whether it's our prisons, the places where your potential people, the people who are potentially ready to stand trial, are being housed? What are we seeing as far as numbers as far as COVID is concerned?
No county jails in the 14th Circuit have reported positive COVID testing. They all have set up a particular area in that jail for the first 14 days when a person comes in, so they can then stabilize and be tested, and then they can go into the general population. Now, the Department of Corrections is a different story, and as you probably are reading over in Sneed's at the ACI facility, well over 150 positives in that facility alone. Holmes County, for example, had 60 positives just the other day of inmates in the prison facility. So transports from the prisons to the courthouses are going to be restricted, just as transports to the Florida State Hospital have been restricted for those competency evaluations and restorations. So it has had a domino effect everywhere you go. You've got to make sure that it is safe before we can do an event, and if a particular facility is under lockdown because of the illness, we can't get that person back right now.
Yeah, it makes sense. Just as the video process of doing first appearances saves a bunch of time because you can put a lot of people in that queue through the process in a very short period of time, especially if they don't have to be physically transported to the courthouse facility, I would imagine that there's going to be a time saving and a labor saving and a cost saving a benefit to some of this video conferencing of the general court procedures.
There is. We are not transporting people over from a jail if they are local. We can do it by Zoom. We can do their hearings by Zoom. Their pretrial pleadings, we can do some of those as well. So it does help the security issue, but remember, our mission right now is to limit the number of people in a particular courthouse facility, and those that are in a holding cell are particularly suspect as far as any type of COVID-19 spread. So the fewer people we bring, the healthier we can keep a facility.
Wow, whole bunch there. Well, and all of it makes total sense, probably something that nobody really considers unless they're tied up in that court system in some way, unless they're a defendant or waiting for somebody to go to trial that they're accusing of something. Thanks for letting us know about that. I would imagine that there's going to be something of a value for us to be able to put this out on your behalf, because people better understand what they're going to be up against before they get to that point, and be able to understand maybe some of the particularly lengthy processes that they're going to have to go through compared to the old days when you could walk into that courthouse.
We will have, and have at this time, signs posted all over reminding about distancing and hygiene. A lot of signage about those CDC benchmark questions that you've got to answer to make sure that you've not been exposed. One other component, though, is that family or friends are not going to be allowed in the courthouse during phase 2. Instead, we will live stream our events on YouTube so people can see what's going on with their loved ones sitting at home. Again, reduce the foot traffic, reduce the spread.
So court proceedings are, unless it's an extenuating circumstance, are open to the public anyway under normal conditions. So you don't have to worry about passwording these events or anything. You can just put it out there, give them a link, and anybody who wants to, whether it's news media or relatives of those who are involved, can simply tune into that Zoom meeting, just like they're doing probably elsewhere anyway these days, and observe that court proceeding.
They can, but we are taking that Zoom recording and putting it directly on YouTube Live under the 14th Judicial Circuit YouTube channel. And you can watch your proceedings that day, and you can see it live as it's happening.
So a lot of those folks that like to go hang at the courthouse and see the exciting cases, they can do this from the comfort of their own home.
Absolutely.
Chris, thanks so much for coming in. I want to keep you around for the second segment and talk about some other stuff, but this is good information. Obviously, if somebody is involved in some kind of a court proceeding, if they know this sooner than later, it's probably going to save them a little bit of heartburn. Good job, and as one of the chief judges, you're definitely earning your money these days because of the processes that you're having to help put into place. I would imagine that this is something you didn't necessarily sign up for, not that you mind doing it, but it's another wrinkle to the job.
It has been very challenging, not only for the chief judges, but for the judges in general. I mean, this is a new way of doing business, but it is a great time for us to examine each process and find where we can be more efficient and effective.
Thanks again for coming in and sharing that.
Thank you.
Our guest today is Chris Patterson, Chief Judge, one of the Chief Judges in the 14th Judicial Circuit, and obviously a friend of the show. Chris comes on regularly to let us know about what's going on in the world of jurisprudence, the newest laws, things of which you should be familiar. We encourage you to continue watching the show. You can Google search our show with the term Judge Chris Patterson or Chris Patterson and find out some more of those informative shows in which Chris has participated. If you are going to be part of a court proceeding, this is great information to know. You may be able to save yourself some time and trouble by being able to work from the comfort of your own home. If you want to view some of these court proceedings, I can't help but think that that's a positive thing as well. We'll be right back.